Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Tampa Bay Real Producers Podcast. This, of course, is the podcast that is made for real producers, by real producers, and with none other than Tampa Bay's Real Producers. Also powered by Top Producers Nation. Our platform is designed to help agents become top producers in their desired markets anywhere in the country. Today, we get to hang out with a top producer, of course, here in the Tampa Bay market, Miss Monica Dudas. How you doing, Monica?
I'm great. How are you, Rob?
I'm doing well. You can call me Rob, Don, whatever the heck. Doesn't matter what you call me. I don't care. Just don't call me late to dinner. But Monica is a top producer, as you can see. We just recently featured Monica as a team leader in our June 2024 issue of the Tampa Bay Real Producers magazine. Monica is with Urban Core Realty. Is that right?
Correct, yes.
That's Monica's brokerage that she started just last year, right? November of 2023. So we'll talk a little bit about that. I think that's an interesting journey of starting your own brokerage and why. But for people who don't know you, haven't had a chance to read your article at all yet, Monica, why don't we start with just your background? I know you said off camera you grew up upstate New York, Buffalo.
Yes.
You know,
Bills.
Big hockey and Bills fan,
Yes.
Bills Mafia, all that stuff. So
Yes.
Monica's from upstate New York. Tell us a little bit about your journey. Like, what got you to Florida? What drew you here? When did you come to Florida? How did all that happen?
So I found Florida when I started to navigate colleges and, looking at different opportunities there. And once I came down during my spring break to check out St. Leo University, I saw the palm trees and sunshine, and I just fell in love with Florida and thought, this will be a cool place, and I've been here ever since.
Yeah, that's a similar story, I think, for a lot of people that get attracted to Florida. You know, palm trees and sunshine, that tends to do the trick for most, especially when you grow up in Buffalo.
Yes.
It's a little different.
Yes.
Little different scenery up there. So you came here for school. Did you stay here, I guess, after you graduated?
Correct, yes.
Okay.
I've been in different parts of the Bay Area, but mostly in Wesley Chapel.
What'd you go to school for? What was your major?
I started out, I wanted to be a dentist and realized I just couldn't do that.
Okay.
So I ended up switching and becoming I became a science teacher, but I studied education after.
Really? That's cool. So you taught science?
I did.
High school or what years?
I did middle school.
Okay.
Yes.
How long did you do that?
For about 5 years.
Did you enjoy it?
Yes.
Yes and no?
No. I did enjoy the students, but
Didn't enjoy the pay?
well, teaching science to sixth graders was a little challenging.
Sure.
You know, they're still trying to figure out what shoe goes on what foot, you know? So sometimes it's more, just not being able to help them grasp like the concepts that I really wanted to help them grasp.
What kind of science? Was it like chemistry, biology?
Well, in Florida, we actually do a little bit of each of the different cores so that we touch on it. But in each year, they kind of continue to add layers. So, my students kind of knew some of the stuff already that, I was really hoping to convey to them. And so it wasn't, not to say that it wasn't challenging, but it was, I wanted something a little bit, more, not rewarding. I don't know what the exact word is, but I just realized that, I didn't think teaching was going to be like a long-term thing for me. So.
Okay.
And then I had the opportunity to stay at home with my kids. And
sure.
Then, when I wanted to go back to work, teaching wasn't really something I was passionate about anymore. So I kind of just changed gears.
So Monica has 4 boys. We were talking about that too off camera. Teenage age, I think, and younger, right?
Yes, 8, 10, 13, and 17.
Okay, so she's a very busy mom, as you can imagine, running a successful business, and of course, being a mom with 4 boys, that's not easy to handle. I think you mentioned that they're big hockey fans, and you're a hockey family, and all that fun stuff. So you said when you left teaching initially, you got to stay home for a while with the boys?
Yes.
Okay.
So I was at home for about 10 years.
Oh, very cool.
Yes.
Did you homeschool?
I did try to. I did.
We actually are homeschooling now.
Okay.
Yeah.
I did, and I really enjoyed it. And then after about like first grade or so, we actually decided to put them in school. So my kids go to an amazing school, and I really
Wesley Chapel, right? That's where you're living now.
Well, actually, they go to Academy at the Farm. So
okay.
I don't know if
yeah,
so that's
I'm
like
familiar.
Gate City, and it's a great school, and so I'm super appreciative for that. And
That's cool.
yes, it wasn't the plan initially, but it just kind of worked out that way, and I think it helped me too because I was doing a lot. With
Sure.
This. Yeah.
When did you start to get this like itch for real estate? How did this whole thing start to? As a previous science teacher, it doesn't seem like it's a natural transition.
Right.
So where did this
funny.
real estate thing come from?
On the playground.
Is that right?
I was with my children, and there was another parent out there with me, and he asked me if I would consider nannying like for his family, and I was like, no, thank you, but I already have 4, and
Right.
It was kind of a lot.
I don't need any more, especially not my own.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and he's like, you should be a realtor. You should consider real estate. And I thought on it for a bit, and we had just bought our house around that time, and I didn't use a realtor. Still to this day, I don't know how, but I got a check at closing.
Oh, wow.
I negotiated really strongly.
There you go.
And I would tell my husband at the time, like, hey, just ask for this, do this. We're not using a realtor. I want that commission too. Like all of this stuff. So I really, yes. And
it's a cutthroat teacher over here. Don't mess with Monica.
So I went ahead and I thought about it. And so 3 weeks later, I was licensed. Like,
wow.
Just like that.
What year was that?
That was 2018.
Okay. So you got licensed in 2018.
Yes.
And it sounds like you just enjoyed the process of negotiating your own house that you thought, why not make this a business, right?
Why not? Yes.
That's cool.
So,
did you know anybody in real estate at the time or have any connections at all in the industry? No?
I really did not. I did not have any connections. My ex-husband, he actually knew somebody that had a brokerage. We had the same last name.
Okay.
And so he just made that connection with me, and then that was it. I started working for a company called Second Avenue.
Okay.
And
are they based out of the Wesley Chapel area too?
Actually, they're down in Ybor, but
Okay.
they've got a couple. I think their headquarters is in Chicago, and then they have a couple different spots. I know they're in Miami and like different parts of Florida too, but the office that I was in was just downtown.
So did you dive like full time right into it, or did you gradually kind of just increase your business volume? And like, what was your first year like when you first got licensed and trying to figure that space out? Because were you an entrepreneur at all prior? Or this was your first real like diving into your own business in a way?
I had like a small in-house daycare that I ran. That I had like a drop-in kind of thing. It was organic sprouts. So I had like a little bit of I've always had this, I need to do something. I needed to like work in some capacity. So with this one though, I really just put my kids in school into a really nice Montessori, the younger two, and I just needed to make their childcare because that was like a selfish act for me, feeling like, hey, so I want to make up for that. So that was that was the only goal. But then, here I would see my name like on the board, being like, up with some of the top people, and I, at Second Avenue, we had different. We essentially did 3 different things. You could be a listing agent, or you could, there was where we bought off market and did the fix and flip, and then there was also like selling to other investors too. Mm-hmm. So I really got to dive in and learn everything, you know, and it was really it was a great opportunity. Was there a specific niche that you felt like you settled in on and had some success with right away? Well, so when I got licensed, I thought, I live in Estancia, so I'm seeing these $1 million homes, and I'm like, oh, this is going to be great. Yeah. This is real estate, and
so luxurious.
So luxurious. But I go to my very first house. I actually am buying it so that we can fix and flip this property. And yes, it was, no floors, no cabinets, it was rough. And I initially offered one price after seeing it. He thought I didn't know this seller had multiple properties on this street. Mm-hmm. So he thought I was buying a greenhouse. And I'm like, no, sir, I'm buying, 123 ABC Street, telling him the address. And I'm like, it's a yellow house. And so he doesn't know. So we actually ended up purchasing it. And, that was my very first taste of, So was this a fix and flip for yourself, you mean? Or you were working for one of your clients? Second Avenue. I gotcha. So we were doing that for them. Yes.
Got it. Okay.
Yes.
So you found yourself in this investment space. It sounds like
correct.
In your first year or so, a little bit more. Was most of your volume revolving around investment real estate?
The first 2 years, yes.
Okay.
So I did work for Second Avenue, and then after their company, so I left and went with Amherst. They had a different model where they bought and hold for rental
Yep.
portfolios. So I did do that in the very earlier part. And then after Amherst, I worked for Zillow. And that's when I started to learn about listings and really taking on a bulk of, listings in the Tampa Bay area.
How did you end up working when you say you worked for Zillow? I mean, when you go on Zillow, you see a ton of real estate agents on there that don't technically work for Zillow, right? They just are they're paid agents for those advertising spots. That's not what you're talking about, though, right? You worked specifically for the company.
Yes.
And so how did that go down? Did they recruit you? Did you reach out to them?
They recruited me, right before, this would have been right before they were buying a ton of properties and then they were reselling them.
Yep.
And so I was a part of that process. So I was doing the listings with,
they were operating basically like a hedge fund.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes. And it was, between 60 to 100 properties at a time.
Right.
A lot of fun. It was great. People would come in and ask for one thing and I could say no because I had 5 other offers.
Yeah.
And so I really learned how to navigate that and negotiate strong, but also, just how to work on that, that performance level too. So that was really a lot of
Was that when things took off, would you think, in terms of your volume numbers? I know you said you broke 20 million in a year, and was that with Zillow at that time?
Yes.
Okay.
But it also landed me a lot of great opportunities thereafter. So,
for sure.
Yes, I think I was only with them for maybe a year, maybe a little bit more.
Did they just stop buying?
They did.
Yeah.
Yes. I think that, in theory, it was really just taking advantage of the opportunities that we had during that COVID market. But, that the rates came up, and I think they were kind of smart to get out when they did because... Yeah,
it's interesting. Years ago, I guess 2013-ish, 14, I wasn't an agent, but I was working as like a wholesaler middleman for some hedge funds, like American Homes for Rent and BlackRock and some of these bigger, hedge funds that were buying bulk portfolios for single family homes in Tampa Bay. And I think BlackRock bought like 12,000 properties or something in like a couple of year span from an investment standpoint. So I'm somewhat familiar with like looking at the list, right, of seeing all the different homes mapped out on their spreadsheets and what specifically met the criteria, what didn't, and how that was all going to work. So there's a lot there, and it's definitely a different business in many ways than just a traditional, like retail real estate agent, right? And so at some point it sounds like you transitioned into more of that retail world. Is that correct?
Correct.
And that happened, I guess, post-Zillow?
Post-Zillow,
okay.
Yes.
So what was that like is that when you started Urban Core or no?
No, there was I was with another brokerage between Zillow and then Urban Core. I think I was with them for almost 2 years. So
and that was kind of your first endeavor into more of the traditional retail space. So now that you've done both and you're still obviously showing success, I think we looked at over 12 million volume just last year, from while starting a new brokerage and still having 4 boys. What do you enjoy better? Like, do you miss one or the other? Do you like the investment world? Compare it to the retail residential worlds. What's more of your cup of tea?
So thankfully, I get to still participate in both.
Okay.
I do have a couple of investors that I list for.
Sure.
And so I kind of get on a smaller scale. I still have that, and but then I always have buyers or clients that will reach out too, and so I do the biggest difference, I would say, investors just, they have that number in mind, and I know how to get that. And then with, traditional, it's a little bit more of an emotional process, and there's a little bit more. So I always like to make sure, I like being a part of both because it keeps me relevant, and both.
For sure.
So I kind of
that makes a lot of sense. With investors, it's just all about the numbers, right?
Right.
The numbers either work or they don't.
Right.
Good investors don't allow emotions to set in on that. It's just it's either a green light or a red light. It's that simple.
Right.
And I'm I'm a fan of that world in many ways. I read Rich Dad Poor Dad when I was like 19, and that kind of got me into real estate investing myself. And I love that space. But you're right, when you're dealing with homeowners and people selling their property where they've lived in it for 10, 20 years, potentially, there's a lot of memories, there's a lot of emotions tied into that. It's a very different conversation. And I think you have to have the skill. A lot of people are not good at doing both of those things. Most people, I think, specialize in one or the other. Sure. Right. So it is kind of fascinating that you've been successful in both worlds and continue to do both, I guess, from what you're saying. Yeah. So tell me a little bit about this decision to start up Urban Core a little over a year ago, and what type of brokerage you're wanting to build. Is it going to be, I guess, in some ways you probably do serve investors within the brokerage as well as, your traditional buyers and sellers. So talk a little bit about the culture you're building, why you decided to open up the brokerage. Where did that whole thing come to fruition?
Well, it's kind of I wanted to start the brokerage back in 2020. And, of course, I resigned from Second Avenue and on March 3rd. And March 13th is when I believe we all kind of found out about COVID. Up. Yeah. So I was kind of like, well, what do I do now? Right. I don't really know traditional in the sense of being confident enough to kind of, during that time. So I backtracked a little bit and I was like, okay, let me go back so I went with Amherst, another corporate real estate company. And so the seeds were kind of I was already kind of wanting to do this. And I hesitated when I left Zillow because, again, I was still trying to, navigate traditional and I wanted to make sure I had the right support. So I did go with another brokerage. But then the time came where, I've always wanted to have this nonprofit to support. So I had a lot of, when my parents growing up, they had a divorce and it caused some substance abuse. And, we kind of ended up living with my grandparents and just some family stuff. And, but through that divorce and through the struggles that they were facing, there are a lot of things that my brother and I lacked. And, just utilities and groceries and stuff. Sure. So I've always wanted to be able to provide, even if it's one family, just to be able to say, hey, I'm going to cover your utilities for the year. That's cool. While you're, going through whatever. And it doesn't have to be divorce, but sometimes it's right in front of us and we don't even know that. And nobody knew. So me graduating high school is huge. I wasn't even enrolled to go to high school. I actually got denied 3 times. So, So I was kind of I got to do this one day. So when I started sitting on, there was just some changes going within the real estate market is always changing. So I understand that. Sure. But the brokerage that I was at, there was just a lot of shifting and moving that I just kind of thought, well, maybe it's time, maybe it's time I leave. And instead of paying a broker split, I will start pouring into the nonprofit that I've always wanted. So that's where. So you wanted to start a nonprofit? I did. Okay. I actually did start it. I haven't been able to do a whole lot with it yet because I didn't really think, starting a brokerage, and I really didn't anticipate. Yeah, well, you got a ton of free time on your hands, I'm sure. So what's the name of the nonprofit? Urban Lights. Okay. And so was the vision to start the nonprofit and this new brokerage at the same time and have them be named similarly so that you can kind of brand them together? Is that the thought? Well, not necessarily, but yes. I guess for me, it was more of hey, I'm going to get this established because it was always on my heart to do that. My grandparents really helped me a lot and I always wanted to give that back. Yeah. So I thought, hey, I'll get the brokerage up and running and channel, some of our proceeds towards Urban Lights. And I really just expected, it's just me. I wasn't trying to, I was starting to build a team, but I didn't have, a big team. I'm, again, still just starting traditional real estate too. So yeah, I'm kind of just going with it. It was on my heart and I'm we're going to just do it. And so where did the motivation, do you think, come from, Monica, to want to be your own broker?
Did you always have that when you got into real estate, thinking you were going to definitely open your own brokerage one day, or did that kind of happen just somehow differently over? Because it's not like you've been licensed that long, right? You've been licensed since 2018,
right?
And again, a lot of people who do go down that path, from what I've interviewed and seen anyway, it's if they ever even decide to open up a brokerage, it usually is like multiple years down the road, maybe even a decade or longer of what they've done. And I'm not saying there's a right or wrong way to do it, but I do find it fascinating that you, went down the path rather quickly, you would say, and are building some success with it. And so I was just curious if there was any like reason for it or motivation behind it, or any lessons you feel like you learned as a result of it. If you had to do it over again, would you do the exact same thing? Are you happy as far as how everything has gone?
Yes, I do think, naturally was the next step. I hadn't really, I thought about it at times, one day I would, or at least just get my broker's associate.
Yeah.
And that kind of was the plan. But when I left the brokerage, or actually when I told him I was leaving, I wasn't a broker.
Yeah. Right.
It was like a Tuesday, and by the next Monday I took the test and I was like, yeah, I'm
now
a
you
broker.
are.
Here I am. So
do you plan on
really
staying in production as a broker, or do you want to not be in production as a broker?
I really like it. I think
Right.
I think it's just something that I've found, at least for now. I enjoy, the challenges and the obstacles, and I've found that, this has given me that thing that I was kind of like, wanting to have with that I was missing with teaching too. So I like even my littles, they want to be realtors too.
That's cool.
I'm passionate about real estate,
Yeah.
and so that's where I do want to stay in production, and I really would like to build up maybe 10 agents just like me.
Okay.
And
I think you said you have 5 now, right?
I have 5 now.
Cool.
Yes.
And so how do you balance the effort of self-production compared to recruiting, right? And supporting the agents that you have? What does that look like as far as how you think about it and execute that time commitment?
So good question. Truthfully, I did not do any recruiting. I really just figured it would take me a little time to kind of navigate this and get things up and running, and I wanted to perfect more things before I really opened that up for other people. But I did have, some friends and some different people that I've met that have really like gravitated towards me and just wanting to get established. And so, and I'm thankful to see, so, with them coming on too, that I've been able to see them produce as well, where there was no production before. So that's always exciting, I'm like, okay, there's favor here. So with that, I'm not recruiting in like a large capacity or anything like that.
You're not trying to scale necessarily from a recruiting side.
Right. So it helps me juggle.
Ideally, it sounds like you'd like to have your 10 or so agents that come to you fairly organically.
Yes.
And that you really can almost be picky with in terms of who you want to work with and represent your team.
Right.
And then while still producing. So with your business now, what percentage comes from like the investor side versus the traditional side?
I would say probably around 70.
As on the investor side.
Yep.
So that's still a big part of it then.
I did. Well, and that was just, that was more of a recent thing. I think they just see what I'm capable of. And so if something's going off, something's going wrong with another agent, I've actually had to kind of come in. And so I did just get quite a bit to kind of help facilitate that. Yes.
Is it mostly fix and flips, or is it buy and hold type investment opportunities?
Well, actually they're flipped properties. So I will list like the fully renovated, beautiful, staged, like, I couldn't be more grateful. I'm really, it's been
awesome.
A nice,
Mostly Wesley Chapel area, or do you guys work in other pockets?
I work kind of all over. I've even got stuff in Orlando.
Really?
Yep. So I have an agent over there that helps me with that. But yeah, I'm kind of in Clearwater, St. Pete.
Cool.
It's Wesley Chapel is more of I would say that's more like my traditional.
That's your farming most. I mean, you obviously live there, so it makes sense.
Yes.
Let's talk a little bit about, we talked a little bit off camera about just what it's like to run a successful career while being a mom, with 4 kids. And there's got to be challenges there as far as balance. How do you try to make that work? You're not the first person that we've interviewed who, has done that successfully, but I think there is something that a lot of, women struggle with, right? Is in that balance role. So any thoughts there as to how you've made that work over the years? It sounds like earlier you mentioned that you did stay home for a while, and I'm assuming that probably was helpful too in that moment of time. But when you did decide to go back and start building this business that you have, has that still been a challenge? Is it still a challenge for you today, or do you find that you've really gotten a good hang of that balance and what's worked for you?
I would say the consistency that I have with my children. We do have different schedules and different things that will pop up, hockey. And of course, with 4 boys, we get a lot of birthday invites and yes. So I do everything that I can with them always. They are my first vocation. They are my everything. So, and then real estate just has, I can do that in my sleep most of the time. So it's very natural for me. So I'm really grateful. But they, we come home and they have until 4:00 to get a snack. They have to do 30 minutes of reading. So we have that just before the end of the day for me, I can brush up on whatever I need to, but I try to maximize all of my efforts when I don't have them.
Yeah.
So that I am present when I do. And I have wonderful kids, so it does not, it just makes it easier for me. And, people think 4 boys and probably like total chaos, but.
Well, your go time is basically when they're in school, it sounds like, right?
Yes.
Yep. They're in school, and that's when mama goes to work, right?
Yes,
and it hits it hard. And then when they're home, it's all about the kids, I guess, at that point, right?
Right.
Their activities and functions and everything that they have going on.
And the team. Now I have people that, for open houses and stuff. So we just leverage with each other. And, it's really.
That makes sense.
That's nice to have too.
It's another reason too as to why it would make sense for you to open your own brokerage, right? So you can be a little bit more aligned in the recruiting side, even though you're not going to be a mega recruiter, like bringing people on so you can have that help and that scalability. So that makes a lot of sense too. All right. So we're going to wrap up in a few minutes here. I think it's been interesting so far to kind of dive into your story. Monica, we appreciate you being here. For people, again, who don't know you that well on the personal side, so we already talked a lot, of course, about 4 boys. You're a hockey family. What do you guys love to do for fun when you're not just jamming at work or, I guess, going to hockey games? Like, what are some of your hobbies and interests and things that keep Monica ticking?
So my oldest is 17 and he has recently started working out and, kind of
looking buff.
I mean, I don't know, right? So I've been running for like as long as I can remember and started going to the gym and he goes, 2 minutes in and he's like,
well, it's those 17-year-old genes, they don't.
I'm grateful, but I love it. It's a good bonding.
So you guys go to the gym together?
On occasion, he has been going with his best friend lately, but it's still something we get to talk about. He buys the protein powder now,
there
so
you go.
I'm like,
nice.
Hey, this is great. Yes. So we're really enjoying that.
Have you converted to like Lightning fans yet down here? Or are you guys all Buffalo Sabres all the time?
I think we're Sabres.
You're Sabres true and true.
Dad is big. He's from Florida, so he's a Bucks and Lightning fan.
Oh, he is.
All of that.
And he couldn't win them over, huh?
I think it's the mafia. I really do. I think they like the
For people who don't know, she doesn't mean the literal mafia. All right, there's a thing called the Bills Mafia. It's a sports fandom term, just so we all know that, right?
Yes, I think it's the energy. Like if it's always fun and enjoyable
no doubt.
For them. So.
I'm from Connecticut, as I said, so I grew up kind of as a New York sports fan. Okay. So I'm still hardcore Yankees, Giants, Knicks. That's like my thing, and that'll never stop. So even though I do root for the Bucks and I cheer them on, at their heart, when you grow up that way, you're not gonna. A true fan doesn't just abandon their teams. I mean, come on, it's not gonna work.
They'll get the Bills so one day. One day we'll win.
That's actually where I kind of became a football fan. Was the Bills Giants Super Bowl, the first one?
Oh wow.
Yeah, I know it was a heartbreaker for you guys, but the whole Scott Norwood wide right.
We don't love them for the win. We just.
Yeah. Hey, 4 years in a row going to the Super Bowl. No other team can say that. Well, they didn't pull one out, but it's still.
We're looking
pretty
really
impressive.
Good, so I think we're getting close.
There's a cool show too. I don't know if you saw that on Netflix that talked about those years when they went to the 4 straight Super Bowls. I think it's called like The Falls, Bill's Fall, something like that. It's a cool documentary though. It'd be worth you guys checking out if you're Buffalo fans. I think it's on Netflix. I was just watching it not that long ago actually.
Okay.
And years ago I got to meet Jim Kelly. He signed a football for me. I did some consulting for a business up in Rochester.
I think we have a secret Bills fan over
well,
here.
I know. I have a lot of friends that are diehard Bills fans, yes. So I do know my Bills connections up there.
I love it.
I respect the Bills Mafia. I'll put it that way.
That's cool.
So a couple things here. We'll do some rapid fire questions, Monica.
Okay.
First off, do you have a favorite book or author or seminar maybe that you've attended that you feel like has made a huge impact on you personally or professionally?
Can I say this? The Bible?
Of course you can.
Nothing
wrong with the Bible.
Yeah, I actually started just to put God first and
awesome.
in my finances and like in my life. And I really, I hadn't really done that before.
Very
and after
cool.
I started doing that, everything has been organic. I really don't have a lead source. So I know that's
awesome.
That's it. That's
I'm
all
a big
got.
believer. I read the Bible every morning, so there's nothing wrong with that at all.
Beautiful. Yes.
Yeah, very cool. Do you have a favorite book of the Bible? Favorite story?
I am a huge fan of Romans, personally.
Okay.
I know it's...
People call that the Constitution for Christians.
I think so. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It helps me. Kind of, Paul is very, he's emotional and I'm emotional. So I think I like him a lot. But yes, I think it's just one that I always
Did you grow up a
revert
Christian
to.
or did you accept Christ later in life? Or
So later in life, it was January 9th, 2009.
Nice. Know the exact date, huh?
Exact date. I remember exactly. Yes. I did grow up in when grandparents would take me to church every Sunday, and I didn't understand or grasp everything that I wanted to.
Yeah.
So that was just a different, it was, what they did was amazing. They shared with me too, to tithe and everything at that point too.
Yeah.
But I needed I needed something a little different as far as, I needed to read the Bible. I needed to actually have that relationship, which I didn't have. And that did come later. So,
yeah, we could talk about this too off camera, but there's a website that we built about a year ago called livesforchrist.com. And there's an ebook on there called The 7 Disciplines for Christian Fulfillment. And one of them, it just kind of walks through things like studying the word and powerful prayer life and tithing and some of the other disciplines. And so I just had a conversation this week actually with one of my connections in the video space. We're going to probably start a podcast called the Lives for Christ podcast, where we can interview Christians just to kind of share more testimonies, right? Yeah. And get more of that space out there. So maybe we'll have to have you on that podcast too, right? That would be kind of neat.
Yes,
and so we'll have to talk more about that, but it's great to hear you share a little bit about your faith. Do you have a favorite TV show or a movie?
Well, I actually struggle because I am so busy. If I sit down to watch a show or anything, I am out within like 2 minutes. So I really don't.
Because you don't have the patience or you don't have the time?
I'm so
both?
Tired.
Gotcha.
I'm so exhausted that it's like I fall asleep immediately.
Yeah.
This would be in the movie theater. Or, yes.
That's funny.
So bad.
Actually, I can relate though. When I put a movie on at home, a lot of times now, I just don't even make it through the thing. I fall asleep on my couch.
Yes, within minutes too.
Yeah.
So, and I feel, my kids.
I thought it was old age, which probably is part of it too, Rob. I think is the old age component, but I don't know. Maybe I'm just so exhausted I can sell myself on that. I work so hard.
I do. I earn my Z's. I really do. I do. But so I don't have a show or a movie.
Cool.
I'm more of a book reader. So if anything.
Do you have a favorite? So when you say the book outside, you mentioned the Bible already. Is there another favorite book?
I'd have
or
to
author?
think about that.
Okay.
Well, I really like Bill Johnson.
I haven't heard of him.
Oh, yes. You've got to check him out.
Is it fiction, nonfiction?
He's a Christian. He's a pastor in California, but he's got some really cool stuff. So I do read a couple like self-help books too, and stuff like that as well. But I'm not really big on fiction. And,
gotcha.
Yeah.
Favorite food?
Favorite food. I'd have to go with. I really love sushi and
can't go wrong. Yeah.
tacos. Right?
There you go.
Tacos, so.
What's your nationality? Are you Italian?
I'm actually Polish and German and like a couple other things. So.
Yeah. As you don't know, Rob's speaking Polish apparently over there. So.
Oh yeah, I know the birthday song, Stola, Stola.
Yeah, my wife is actually half Polish and half Italian.
Okay.
So I heard the Polish birthday song. I've heard many times over the years, for sure.
Yes.
Mostly her Polish family is in Connecticut still. But when we would go up there for a Thanksgiving thing every year, they called like Vigilia, I think is what it was called.
Okay.
And they would do like the Polish song sing-alongs and polka dances and the whole 9 yards. Yeah.
That makes sense because Thanksgiving was always it's still my favorite holiday.
Oh,
it was always a very big thing for my grandparents.
Yeah, you can't go wrong when you're stuffing your face. Absolutely.
Yeah.
We'll wrap up here with this thought, which is a little bit of a deeper question.
Okay.
But I'm interested to hear your answer. So, at some point, obviously, we all kind of look back at what type of legacy maybe we would want to leave, right? What we want to be most remembered for. And when you think about that, hopefully many years from now, and you're thinking, whether it's professionally or personally, what do you think, Monica, would be most important, for you in terms of what you'd want that legacy to be?
When people think of me, I just want them to see the light. I just want them to see Jesus. So that's really all I care about. And with my kids too, we always try to offer grace. I just try to shape them and help mold them into that, as well. And I see it. And so I'm really hoping that, that's what I leave behind for them is just, that Corinthian love,
That's cool.
Just being that person. And I'm not perfect,
cool.
but
none of us are. That's why we need a savior, right?
Yes.
That's what the faith is all about.
I mean, yeah, right. My daddy owns it all, so I don't really, I'm an heir to that. So I don't really feel like money is, I operate out of that abundance always. So
totally.
Yeah.
Very cool. Well, it was great to meet you in person finally and have you here on the show and tell your story a little bit. We'll have to have you either back here or on the Lives for Christ podcast one of these days. We'll talk more about it. We will end the episode the way we always do. And the last thing I'll say is if anybody wanted to reach out to Monica, what's the best way for someone to contact you if they just wanted to pick your brain a little bit on your brokerage, learn about, maybe wanted to talk to you about that or the investor world that you've had some success with and how that's worked for you? What's the best way for someone to reach you?
So I will drop my phone number in the comments. Yes, I'll do that. Text is the best way. I still... I'm navigating the social media. I should really be better at that. But I do have Instagram and Facebook and all of that too. So, but
very
yes,
cool.
Text
Awesome.
would be good.
We'll make sure it's up on our description and everything too.
Perfect.
So people can connect if they want. So as the way we end every episode is with a challenge to the audience, whether you're watching live stream through our YouTube channel, or you're listening on any of the podcast platforms. If you don't already subscribe, by the way, just click the button. That way you'll be notified every time a new episode comes out, which is weekly. That way you'll be able to be recognized when the next one drops, and we do drop a new episode every Friday. But as we always say, what is one action step that you can take from this conversation today with Monica that can propel you forward? You have to be willing to take an action step to get the most value out of these conversations. And maybe you're somebody who wants to learn more about like working with investors, and Monica's obviously done very well with that. Possibly you want to pick her brain more about it or figure out a way that you can add that extra service to your business. Possibly you want to talk to her about, a brokerage, or maybe even you've thought about starting your own brokerage and you're inspired by the fact that Monica went for it and is now building that brand, affiliating it with a nonprofit that she's passionate about. All of those are things that, could have inspired any of you to take action as well. Or possibly you're someone who's really been struggling with the balance of like having a family and having 3, 4, 5 kids, or, however many it might be, and still running a successful business. And obviously Monica has shown that she's been capable of that as well. So there could be an opportunity to have that conversation too. But take an action step, right? Do something that's going to move you forward personally or professionally. And if you do that, then the time you invested in this podcast will be well worth it. We will see you, of course, on the next episode of Tampa Bay Real Producers. See you later.